A guaranteed weapon banner, incredibly powerful effects, shareable equipment across endgame content. There's no doubt at all for any player familiar with other popular gacha games that Wuthering Waves has one of the most generous and player-friendly weapon systems across the genre. Unfortunately, this generosity has come with a price. 5-star weapons, specifically the limited ones, are some of the most valuable pieces of equipment in the game. Part of this is because of their fantastic base stats, incredible critical boosts, and powerful weapon effects. The other part is because of how genuinely bad many of the 4-star weapons are. While a player has the potential to pull and upgrade these weapons at a much faster pace, oftentimes their combination of main stat and weapon effects, even at max rank, pales in comparison to the other limited options. There's no problem at all with more expensive weapons resulting in better performance, but that gap is wide, and it extends beyond performance in combat. Today we'll be discussing the power level of 4-star weapons, not just from a combat perspective, but from an account building one as well. 4-star weapons limit your options across your gameplay in more ways than you might think. Outside of dealing less damage, 4-star weapons also severely limit the viability of your echoes, your resource efficiency, and even team synergies. We'll be breaking down why this is the case, and why pulling for 5-star weapons can actually be one of the most efficient ways to optimize your account, even as a low spender or free to play. When it comes to 4-star weapons, outside of those in the battle pass, virtually every single one has a secondary main stat of attack percentage, defense percentage, or energy regeneration percentage. This effectively splits the weapons across 3 categories: offense, defense, and support. These defensive and supportive weapons are some of the best in the game, primarily due to the fact that they have no 5-star options. The Concerto energy regeneration weapons in particular are some of the most powerful. The low base attack on these weapons and 4-star weapons in general, which can severely impact the personal damage of a character, typically isn't a concern, as these characters that use these weapons typically don't care about their damage, or their damage scales with a different stat, like defense for Tao Chi. On the other hand, for offensive weapons, the entire opposite is the case. With lowered base attack stats and a main stat that is typically attack, these weapons at a baseline don't feel that great. When compared to 5-star weapons, the lowered base attack on the 4-stars, even combined with their attack main stat, has a huge impact. Every percentage stat boost in the game, be it from your echoes or character abilities, scales off this base attack. Oftentimes, the attack main stat on these 4-star weapons just barely makes up for this difference in base attack, and only once a character is at very high levels to allow the base attack of that character, which is included in the percentage calculation, to have a greater impact. Coupled with the fact that these 5-star weapons are bundled with a critical rate or critical damage secondary main stat, the end result is that your 4-star weapons are effectively missing a whole secondary main stat compared to 5-star weapons. When the second main stat is basically equivalent to the raw stats you get from a plus 25 untuned 4-cost echo, you are missing a lot of stats just from using a 4-star weapon. This isn't even counting the weapon effects. The lack of critical stats on every 4-star weapon outside of the battle pass is another huge issue, especially when it comes to resource management and echo building. When you're building and farming for a DPS character using a 4-star weapon, oftentimes the only viable 4-cost you can use is one with crit rate. Going with critical damage will make it impossible to have a reasonable critical ratio across your character. Similarly, to get that crit rate up to usable, around 65% for a character, you'll need to combine that crit rate main stat on your 4-cost with a crit rate roll on virtually every single piece. This makes your farming process incredibly painful when gearing your characters. Optimizing for only 1 or 2 stats in particular means that you'll have less viable options when it comes to your echo main stats, and a mandatory requirement for crit rate across your substats. If you're someone who's been rolling to optimize echoes, you'll understand that this will dramatically increase the time that it takes for you to get a working equipment set for a character. This means more tuners, more echo experience, and more farming to get your character in a usable state. This also means more frustration, bad rolls, and tuners evaporating into thin air. In a lot of ways, saving your resources by working with cheaper equipment can result in more expenses later down the road. code. It's eerily similar to real life. Pulling that 5-star weapon is a big upfront expenditure, but it saves you a lot in the long run, especially if you're looking to get your stats to a certain level to challenge endgame content. Plus, you're guaranteed to get this power and efficiency. Building and upgrading 4-cost weapons also comes with another devastating downside: sunk costs. Early on in the game during Yinlin's release, I made a terrible mistake. With Jinzhou Keeper, a respectable 4-star stat stick on her banner, I made the hasty decision to save some resources and build her around that 4-star weapon instead of her signature, String Master. Then I remembered I had Encore on my account as well, and realized that by pulling String Master, I could upgrade 2 extremely powerful characters at once. I pulled Yinlin's weapon. It's great. I also have a level 60 or 70 Jinzhou Keeper in my inventory. Because of the ability to share weapons in endgame content, I will likely never need to use Jinzhou Keeper ever again. I will never get those hundreds of thousands of credits, weapon experience, and skill upgrade materials back. In short, 4-star weapons are even worse to level up because of the ability to share weapons in endgame content. As you progress through the game and build up your roster, pulling for one limited 5-star weapon can potentially gear 2, 3, or even 4 characters at once, and almost all of the time, this will be an upgrade. As the game's roster only grows with each new release, the value of your existing 5-star weapons can only increase. My advice to every player is to simply build up that arsenal. Pull a limited 5-star weapon for every weapon class. Sure, you might not have the most synergistic weapon effect and character kit combinations like Jin C, who does resonant skill damage working with Jian's weapon that grants heavy attack damage, but her performance on a limited 5-star weapon will be much better than any of the 4-stars. This also makes the character building process, specifically for DPS characters, far more manageable in the long run. Viewing these weapon pulls as an investment in your account rather than an expenditure is a perspective that makes a lot of sense, especially when every single weapon is guaranteed. At the end of the day, Kuro has to make money. I have no doubt in my mind that the game's systems of a guaranteed weapon matter, weapon sharing, and the poor performance of many 4-star weapons are designed to persuade players to pull on those limited weapon banners. But in a lot of ways, Kuro is using the carrot instead of the stick to motivate us. They're providing more benefits to pulling these weapons instead of drawbacks. It would have been easy to lock echo and weapons to a character once they're used in the tower, but they didn't. Hopefully, this overview was helpful in highlighting just how effective a 5-star limited weapon is, even if its stat bonuses don't perfectly line up with a character. The upside of pulling these weapons is huge, and in my opinion, can do more for your account and its progression than you might think. Peace out.